Hey guys, tonight we're traveling to a place that's somehow more dangerous than a toddler with a marker and quieter than your last group chat. The average American living room, circa 1954. Specifically, we're visiting a magical land where the vacuum never sleeps. The cheese is always processed. And the strongest thing in the house isn't Dad's handshake, it's what's in Mom's glass at 11:23 a.m. That's right. Tonight, we're figuring out why 1950s housewives started drinking before noon. Before you settle in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this bizarre blend of history and insomnia. Leave a comment telling me what you're sipping on tonight, and if it's grape juice, I promise I won't judge. Just remember, the women of the 50s probably would have called that a wasted opportunity. Now, dim those lights. Turn on your fan for that soothing white noise, and get as comfy as a mid-century housewife after her second Tom Collins. Let's take a moment. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be the queen of a perfectly waxed linoleum castle? Did June Cleaver ever want to meet the Hoover out the window? How many Jell-O salads can a single human make before they start talking to their furniture? What happens when you realize your entire adult social life consists of pretending you enjoy bridge, casserole swaps, and the sound of your own children shrieking? Would you too reach for a little liquid lunch if your boss was a toddler and your performance review was just a sticky handprint on the wall? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1955 in a pastel kitchen that smells like bacon, Aquanet, and existential dread. Your calendar is blank except for bake sale and defrost freezer, and you haven't even had your first drink yet. You're not greeted by the gentle beeping of a phone, but by a child screaming, a dog barking, and the ever-present hum of your neighbor's lawnmower at 6:03 a.m. You rub your eyes and realize it's not just Monday. It's laundry day. And the smell of wet wool is about to become your signature scent. Let's set the scene. Your bed is not a sanctuary, but a staging area. You didn't buy it for comfort. You bought it because good housekeeping said it would bring the family together, which is a polite way of saying everyone's going to end up in here, including the dog. Your pillow has just enough give to make you wonder if there's a rock in it, and your blanket is tucked in tighter than your secrets. Sunlight slithers through floral curtains, and you can hear the rhythmic thud of your own heartbeat, which at this hour sounds a lot like, why? You don't wake up. You are woken up by the world, by responsibility, by that one child who somehow always needs water at dawn. You slide out of bed as quietly as possible, the floorboards creaking a warning to anyone who ever fantasized about sleeping in. The air is heavy with the scent of last night's casserole and something vaguely lemony, courtesy of a cleaning product that promises to solve your problems but never quite does. You shuffle to the bathroom, passing mirrors that offer unfiltered feedback. You look. In a word, vintage. Your hair, once perfectly set, now lists to starboard, and your face bears the creases of someone who wrestled with a pillowcase and lost. There's a lipstick smudge on your chin and a mascara streak that says you're either very glamorous or deeply tired, maybe both. By 6:09 a.m., you're already on your first task. Waking everyone else. You've become the human snooze button, cheerfully urging small people out of bed with a voice that's a little too high-pitched to be natural. The dog follows you, trailing hope and fur in equal measure. As you coax reluctant children from beneath their sheets, you try to sound patient, nurturing even, but your internal monologue is closer to a hostage negotiation. You mentally draft a letter to the Nobel Committee, suggesting that whoever invented the pop-up toaster deserves the Peace Prize. In the kitchen, the light is a harsh fluorescent, exposing every crumb, every wayward Cheerio, every splash of something sticky that will never fully come off the linoleum. The radio crackles with upbeat morning chatter, promising a sunny day and cheerfully ignoring the existential dread simmering under your perky facade. You measure out coffee grounds with a hand that only shakes a little, and, With the precision of a NASA engineer, pour water into the ancient percolator. It gurgles to life, sounding more exhausted than you feel. Now you're faced with breakfast. There is no Instagram-worthy spread here. It's a symphony of burnt toast, cold cereal, and eggs that may or may not resemble eggs by the time you're done. Someone always wants something different, and someone is always disappointed. You scramble to orchestrate this culinary chaos, and as you scrape charred bread from the toaster, you wonder, would anyone notice if you added just a splash of something extra to your orange juice right now? As the sun climbs higher, the sounds intensify. Neighbors are already outside, mowing lawns, raking leaves, or, if they're truly diabolical, power washing their driveways. You consider joining them, if only to prove that you, too, can be productive before sunrise. But first, you glance at the clock. It's 6:22 a.m. You have been awake for exactly 19 minutes, and you are already behind. You try to center yourself, reminding your soul that this is what you signed up for. You picture your own mother, pearl-clad and unflappable, moving through mornings like she was floating on air. You suspect she was either faking it or had a flask hidden in the laundry basket. The day isn't even properly started, and you already need a break. But there's no time for reflection. There's only the relentless march of duties, lunches to pack, children to herd, and a spouse to launch out the door looking like an advertisement for brisket and brill cream. The weight of expectation settles over you, heavier than the wet towels waiting in the hamper. Still, you take a breath, put on your bravest smile, and step into the fray. Because in 1950s suburbia, the day doesn't begin until you say it does, even if you're the only one awake enough to notice. And if you make it to noon before contemplating your first drink, well, congratulations. You've just set a new personal record. The first meal of the day is less rise and shine and more rise and wonder why the toast is on fire again. You move through the kitchen like a zombie, assembling cereal, eggs, and the kind of coffee that tastes like regret. If you're lucky, nobody asks you where the grapefruit is. Your feet shuffle across the linoleum, and there's a faint stickiness that never quite goes away, no matter how much you scrub. The refrigerator hums, overachieving for an appliance that's older than your marriage. And somewhere in the distance, the dog whines for bacon he's never going to get. The radio is already chirping, the happy homemaker hour offering you helpful hints you'll never use, like how to fold a napkin into the shape of a swan, or why eggshells in the garbage disposal build character. You start the percolator and hope that this time, maybe, the coffee will taste less like it was brewed from pencil shavings. Breakfast isn't a meal, it's a gauntlet. One child wants oatmeal, the other wants that one cereal with the cartoon animal, and your spouse, in a fit of optimism, requests eggs over easy, which is just code for good luck. You pretend to listen, stirring 3 things at once, flipping bacon with one hand, and negotiating a hostage situation between 2 siblings with the other. The smoke alarm goes off. Again, this is not a malfunction. It's just part of the ritual. The kitchen fills with a haze of charred bread, and your patience evaporating. The toast is both blackened and cold. A magical combination achieved only by ignoring it for the exact right amount of time. You try to scrape the burnt bits into the sink, but the toaster is holding a grudge from last week and launches a breadcrumb confetti over your counters. The butter is harder than quantum physics and tears holes in the bread, but at this point, presentation is a distant memory. You consider the grapefruit, languishing in the fruit bowl. It's been there since last Thursday, and even the flies have given up on it. Eggs are next. You crack them into the pan, where they immediately behave as if they have a personal vendetta against you. Some days, the yolks break out of spite. Other days, they stick so thoroughly that you're not sure if you're making breakfast or spackling the kitchen wall. The spatula is bent, your wrist aches, and the eggs end up somewhere between runny and why are they so rubbery? But you soldier on, because there's no turning back. There are hungry faces at the table, staring with a kind of blank optimism that's both adorable and vaguely accusatory. The cereal is the only thing you can't burn, but you can spill it, which you do, and the milk follows, flooding the table in a tidal wave of lactose. Your youngest manages to create a Jackson Pollock painting out of jam, toast, and sticky fingers. The dog, ever hopeful, lurks beneath the table like a small furry Roomba, hoovering up anything that falls, which today is most of the meal. Conversation at breakfast is a minefield. Your spouse reads the paper, grunting at headlines. One child asks why we can't just have Pop-Tarts like the Johnsons next door. The other has decided to ask questions about mortality before 7 a.m. You nod sagely and mumble something about vitamins and the food pyramid, secretly wishing the food pyramid included coffee, gin, and 5 servings of silence. All the while, you're doing mental math. How many lunches need to be packed? How much bread is left? And whether there's enough time to run to the store before the entire house descends into chaos. You notice a smear of something unidentifiable on your sleeve, and for a moment, you debate whether it's jelly or existential dread. You check the clock. It's somehow only 7:22. Finally, breakfast winds down. The children vanish, leaving behind a table that looks like a battlefield. Your spouse kisses you on the cheek, leaving a coffee ring on your apron, and heads out the door. You take a breath. The kitchen is quiet at last, except for the lingering smell of smoke and the faint sound of your resolve being tested. You pour yourself a second cup of coffee and stare into the middle distance, contemplating the day ahead. There are still dishes to wash, counters to wipe, and mysteries to solve, like how the butter knife ended up in the sugar bowl, and why you keep buying grapefruit no one will ever eat. You tell yourself tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow, you'll master breakfast. But you know the truth. The toast will burn, the coffee will taste like regret, and somehow, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. Welcome to the kitchen of quiet despair. At least here, you're never alone. Within minutes, the children descend, wild, half-dressed, and suspiciously sticky. You orchestrate the morning routine with military precision, only to realize that you're outnumbered, outsmarted, and already thinking about lunch, and not for the reasons you'd hope. The clock barely hits 7:30 before your hallway becomes a stampede. The first sound is a door creaking open, then a burst of footsteps, laughter, and the unmistakable slap of socked feet skidding on polished wood. The eldest is already in crisis. Someone has taken her hairbrush, again, and the youngest appears to have slept in his school clothes, or, possibly, never changed out of them at all. One child is wearing only a cape and a stubborn attitude, and another drags a blanket behind her, like a tragic, pint-sized Greek hero. There's syrup in someone's hair, and a suspicious smear of peanut butter on the wall. You tell yourself, don't ask. Just clean. The house transforms into an obstacle course. You dodge toy cars, rogue marbles, and whatever monstrosity the children have made out of pipe cleaners and dreams. Your job is equal parts air traffic controller, referee, and motivational speaker. You issue commands with the efficiency of a sergeant. Brush your teeth, find your shoes, don't eat that. Yes, you have to wear pants. No, you cannot take the goldfish to school. For every victory, locating a missing backpack or getting someone's hair into a passable ponytail, there is an immediate setback, like realizing someone has replaced their lunch with a frog. Time bends in this early morning chaos. 5 minutes feels like 30, and you swear the clocks are mocking you. Every so often you attempt to create order, herding small bodies towards the bathroom, only to find that half of them have veered off to build a fort behind the couch. Toothpaste ends up everywhere except on teeth. You hear giggles from the living room and quickly realize the television is on, broadcasting cartoons you didn't approve. One child has glued his hands together with something called school paste, Another claims she needs to dress up for science, which evidently requires a tutu and rain boots. You take inventory of injuries, a stubbed toe, a mysterious scratch, and the emotional scars of being told no to candy before 8 a.m. You issue band-aids and gentle reassurances, even as you notice a small army of plastic dinosaurs colonizing the kitchen counter. You pause for a moment and wonder, did your own mother ever have to break up a sword fight with spatulas before breakfast? As the minutes tick by, you become the keeper of all things lost and found: left shoes, library books, lunchboxes, dignity. You answer questions rapid fire, none of which have logical answers. Why is the sky blue? Can a turtle ride a skateboard? Why do socks always disappear? You become fluent in the language of almost ready and just 5 more minutes. Although you know full well those minutes do not exist. Breakfast, already a disaster, is made worse by children's culinary creativity. Someone dumps half a box of cereal on the floor, another pours orange juice into their oatmeal for science, and there's a brief debate about whether jelly beans count as a fruit. You attempt to mediate, but ultimately settle for, please just eat something that isn't sticky. In your next life, you vow, you'll come back as someone who eats breakfast in silence. Through it all, you try to hold on to your sanity and sense of humor. You chant mantras in your head, this too shall pass, probably with a stain, while quietly plotting how you'll sneak an extra marshmallow in your own coffee later. There's a strange pride in surviving these morning battles. Herding children, it turns out, is both a test of will and a crash course in chaos theory. By the time backpacks are zipped and shoes are mostly on the right feet, you're already exhausted. You hug each child as they march toward the door, cleanish, slightly frazzled, and entirely themselves. You wave goodbye and marvel that you've made it through another round. The house is quieter, for now. You survey the battlefield. Scattered toys, half-eaten toast, a trail of socks leading to nowhere. You pour yourself a fresh cup of coffee, sit down for a breath, and realize you'll have to do it all again tomorrow. But for now, you've earned a few moments of peace, and maybe, just maybe, a little snack that nobody else will ask you to share. Your spouse appears, freshly shaven and smelling like Old Spice, to receive a perfectly timed kiss at the door. He walks out with a briefcase. You stare at the crumbs on the counter and the list of chores, wondering if your day has technically started or if you're still waiting for permission. This moment, call it the mid-century ceremonial sendoff, is a dance rehearsed daily, so well practiced you could perform it in your sleep. And, let's be honest, you often do. Your husband emerges in a suit so crisp you suspect he keeps an ironing board under his pillow, while you do a mental check to make sure you remembered everything. Tie straightened, lunch packed, thermos filled, smile in place. Even the kids seem to sense the gravity of the departure, quieting just long enough for the ritual to unfold. There's a fleeting moment where time slows. You hand over a brown bag lunch containing exactly 3 sandwiches, a thermos of what you generously call coffee, and an apple that's destined to return uneaten. He says something reassuring, like, "Don't work too hard," with the kind of optimism reserved for someone who's never attempted to scrub crayon from a lampshade. Then comes the goodbye kiss, placed lightly on your cheek, a gentle punctuation mark at the end of the preamble that is morning. The door closes with the soft thud of inevitability. Your partner strides toward the car, off to meetings, coffee breaks, and adult conversation. You, meanwhile, are left with the kitchen, a landscape of toast crumbs, sticky glasses, and one coffee ring that will never truly vanish. You watch the car pull away and consider waving, but you're already thinking about the next 6 hours and the marathon of tasks ahead. The house, moments ago a chaos of children and breakfast disasters, settles into a hush so sudden it's suspicious. For a fleeting second, you have the luxury of silence. A silence broken only by the persistent ticking of the kitchen clock and the dog's hopeful sigh. This is the eye of the storm, the brief intermission before Act 2 of domesticity begins. You allow yourself to exhale, if only to inhale again, and start wiping down the counters. You take stock of your to-do list. It's a masterpiece of tiny handwriting and underlines, a daily Everest of expectations. Laundry, dishes, bills, phone calls, vacuuming, possibly solving world peace, and, if you're lucky, a shower. Sometimes you pause and wonder, is this how generals felt before a battle? You eye the mop like a soldier might regard their shield, and somewhere in the distance, the Hoover murmurs a low threat. Now, alone, you begin the transformation from morning caretaker to the CEO of the household. A role with infinite responsibilities and absolutely zero sick days. You survey the breakfast carnage, noticing a suspicious trail of jelly leading from the table to the living room. You follow it, not because you want to, but because if you don't, you'll be scraping strawberry preserves off the sofa until Labor Day. The phone rings. Probably a telemarketer, or Marjorie from next door, ready to chat about the garden club's tulip disaster. You answer in your best cheerful voice, careful not to sound like someone who just lost an argument with the toaster. It's remarkable, you think, how quickly you slip into the day's rhythm. Part efficiency expert, part therapist, and occasionally crime scene investigator. Who put socks in the freezer? Every so often, you drift toward the window, coffee cup in hand, and watch the world outside. Your husband's car is long gone, replaced by the parade of postmen, milkmen, and those mysterious vans that seem to cruise suburbia with no clear destination. For a moment, you wonder what it would be like to simply get in a car and drive. No plan, no errands, just an open road and an empty calendar. Then you remember, someone has to be here to sign for the new vacuum cleaner. You glance at the clock and marvel that it's only 8:17 a.m. You're barely through the first act and already thinking about dinner. The goodbye kiss, for all its mid-century poise, is less a romantic gesture and more a starter's pistol for a marathon of invisible work. You wonder, half hopeful, half knowing, the day will go smoothly if you just keep moving. But there's a quiet pride in this unsung routine. You smooth your skirt, square your shoulders, and step back into the kitchen, ready to tackle whatever comes next. Because in this house, at least, the day starts and ends with you, even if the only person who notices is the dog, still waiting for bacon that never comes. It's 8:17 a.m., and you've already wiped down 3 counters, sorted laundry, and considered a crime of passion against the vacuum. The radio cheerfully reminds you that it's a beautiful day, but all you see is dust. Welcome to the real decathlon of the American dream, housework. You move from room to room with the grim determination of an Olympic athlete, but instead of medals, you collect socks, odd buttons, and a growing sense of déjà vu. There's no applause, just the constant soundtrack of your own inner voice reminding you to soak those stains. And don't forget about the casserole defrosting in the sink. The sun peeks through the window, illuminating every streak and smudge you missed yesterday, which now shine like little badges of failure. First up, the laundry. You tackle it with the focus of a bomb disposal expert. There are whites, darks, colors, delicates, and the special pile labeled "maybe just burn." The washing machine chugs along, sounding as if it's preparing for takeoff. You load, pour, and wonder if anyone in this house understands the emotional journey of a missing sock. Every so often, you fantasize about writing a true crime novel called The Mystery of the Vanishing Underpants. With the laundry spinning, it's time to face the vacuum. It's not a tool so much as a nemesis, a roaring, wheeled beast with a frayed cord and a temperament. The dog flees, the cat judges you, and you discover crumbs in places you didn't know food could reach. You do battle with the dust bunnies under the couch, which seem to have unionized and are staging a sit-in. You wrestle the vacuum's hose from the jaws of a chair leg, knowing that if you win, your prize is slightly cleaner carpet, or at least carpet that smells faintly of defeat and whatever spring meadow air freshener was on sale last month. Next up, dishes. You roll up your sleeves and face a pile that can only be described as archaeological. There are sippy cups from the prehistoric era, Tuesday, plates with what might have been spaghetti, and a butter knife permanently fused to a blob of jam. You scrub and scrape, wishing just for a second that dishwashers had been invented with a just-do-it-for-me setting. You contemplate whether you could get away with labeling the stuck-on gunk as artisanal glaze and selling it at the next PTA fundraiser. Meanwhile, the radio host tells you it's a perfect day to get outside and enjoy the sunshine. You look out the window and see a garden that's less better homes and more nature's revenge. You make a mental note to pull weeds, but the kitchen timer dings and you're yanked back to the reality of oven mitts and burnt muffins. There's never a finish line, only another lap. Just when you think you're catching up, you find a forgotten science project growing mold in a lunchbox or a crayon mural behind the sofa. You consider just hanging a frame around it and calling it modern art. You move through the day in intervals, working in a constant loop: wipe, wash, fluff, repeat. There's no paycheck waiting at the end. Just the hope that maybe, just maybe, someone will notice the towels are folded like tiny terry-cloth soldiers. You glance at the clock again. It's somehow still only 9:30 a.m. The urge to pour a splash of cooking sherry into your orange juice grows stronger. Between chores, you occasionally pause for a second cup of coffee, savoring it like a rare vintage. The phone rings. It's Marjorie next door, asking if you've tried the new floor wax. You smile politely, knowing the only thing shinier than your kitchen floor is your ability to pretend you care about floor wax. You compare notes about stains, recipes, and neighborhood gossip, both of you playing a high-stakes game of who has it more together. By mid-morning, you've achieved a kind of tired satisfaction. Sure, the house isn't perfect, but you've kept the chaos at bay for another day. You smooth your apron, eye the vacuum with suspicion, and decide the dust can wait until tomorrow. After all, even Olympians need a break. And besides, there's always another event coming up. Welcome to the Domestic Olympics. No medals, no glory, just the relentless pursuit of clean. The only adult conversation you have is with Marjorie, who's just come outside to check her roses for the third time today. You swap rumors, compare recipes, and gently judge everyone's lawn. Because socializing is a contact sport in the suburbs. This is no idle chit-chat. This is reconnaissance. The low white fence that separates your property from Marjorie's is less a barrier and more a hotline, a direct line for neighborhood news, casual competition, and the kind of light espionage that makes the Cold War look like amateur hour. You grip your coffee cup and lean just far enough over the fence to signal availability, but not desperation. Marjorie meets you halfway, her hair perfectly coiffed and her gardening gloves suspiciously clean. Neither of you is really here for the roses. You begin with pleasantries. Something about the weather, maybe a compliment on her impatience, which you both know are store-bought. But soon enough, the conversation drifts to the real business of suburbia. Surveillance. You discuss whose dog is digging up flower beds, which teenager is driving too fast, and whether Mr. Henderson's new convertible is compensation for his receding hairline or just a midlife crisis on wheels. You are both masters of the subtle art of information gathering. Every "did you hear about" is a gentle probe. Every "I'm sure it's nothing," but is a red flag dressed up as concern. Together, you analyze recycling bins for evidence of marital discord, more wine bottles than usual, and lawn ornaments for signs of impending divorce. The sudden appearance of flamingos is always a warning shot. You keep tabs on who's gotten a new appliance, who's switched hairdressers, and whose curtains were suspiciously drawn at 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. But gossip isn't just about schadenfreude. It's how you learn about new casserole recipes, which plumber is least likely to ruin your pipes, and whether the PTA president really did steal that apple pie recipe from the back of a box. There's a currency here. Information, tips, favors traded as quietly as rationed sugar in wartime. Marjorie mentions the Hendersons' garage door was open late last night. You counter with the news that the Browns' youngest was seen at the corner store buying candy with a borrowed dollar. It's a ballet of rumors and reassurance, where no one ever really wins, but everyone gets to feel a little less alone. Socializing in suburbia isn't a casual endeavor, it's a test of endurance and diplomacy. You have to sound supportive, never envious, and always just a bit more put together than you really are. Marjorie boasts about her pie crust. You mention your new floor wax. She confesses her fear that her hydrangeas are dying. They're not. You pretend you haven't noticed that her husband put out the trash in his bathrobe again. You have, and so has everyone else. All of this is delivered with smiles and nods, and the unspoken understanding that neither of you would survive a week without the other. But there's a comfort here, too. In a world where the radio DJ's voice is the only other adult you hear before noon, this is a lifeline. Marjorie shares her best cookie recipe and a quiet warning. Apparently, Mrs. Campbell from up the street was seen buying boxed cake mix. Scandalous. You clutch your pearls and agree that some standards simply cannot be compromised, even if you too have a secret stash of Betty Crocker in the back of the pantry. Of course, the conversation must end before it drifts into actual confession. You say your goodbyes, promising to drop off a magazine or return a casserole dish. As you step back from the fence, you notice Marjorie has already begun her slow walk down the flower bed, eyes scanning for anything out of place, hers or yours. You can almost hear her taking mental notes for tomorrow's exchange. You return inside, somehow lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter for having shared a few secrets, heavier with the knowledge that the neighborhood's gaze is everywhere. You smooth your apron, glance around for prying eyes, and start your next task. Because in suburbia, the real window into the soul isn't the front window. It's the space just above the fence, where everyone can see, but nobody dares to really look too closely. Welcome to the Suburban Surveillance Society. Keep your lawn tidy and your stories even tidier. You open the kitchen cupboard and get attacked by an avalanche of pastel containers. There's a party next week, which is just code for, please buy this bowl so Carol doesn't hate you. This, you quickly realize, is not just storage, it's status. The pastel pinks and mint greens, the burpy lids and clever stacking, are less about keeping leftovers fresh and more about showing the world, or at least the block, that you, too, can be part of the future. Somewhere, the Tupperware gods are laughing as you excavate matching lids and containers like an archaeologist at a dig site, except instead of dinosaur bones, you're uncovering 3 different sizes of Jell-O molds and at least one lid with mysterious bite marks. The cupboard, once a sanctuary for mixing bowls and chipped Pyrex, is now a plastic battleground. Each container has a history, a memory, a little existential question attached. You ask yourself, how did I end up with 19 lids and 3 actual containers? What happened at the last Tupperware party that led to this? Why does this blue one smell like onions, even though you only ever stored cookies in it? You try not to think about it too hard. There's a certain ritual to these parties too, invitations delivered with a wink and a promise of fun. But everyone knows you're really being conscripted into Carol's ever-expanding army of hostesses. If you don't show, you risk being ostracized from the next casserole exchange. So, you RSVP. Yes, knowing you'll sit through a demonstration of how to properly burp a lid, followed by an awkward game of charades, and some kind of lime green dessert that jiggles with malicious intent. Carol herself is the queen of plastic. Her kitchen is a shrine to efficiency, or at least the appearance of it. She demonstrates the Tupperware seal with the same flourish a magician might use to pull a rabbit out of a hat. You ooh and ah dutifully, clutching your order form and wondering if you can get away with just buying the smallest bowl. You know you can't. There's a code, unwritten but ironclad. Everyone must buy something, and whatever you buy will arrive 2 months late and never fit in your cupboard. Back at home, the existential dread creeps in as you rearrange your ever-growing stack of containers. Each piece of plastic represents not just leftovers, but expectations about modernity, about order, about keeping up. The promise of Tupperware is immortality for your casseroles. The reality is another item to clean, to store, to forget about until the next avalanche. You briefly imagine a world in which you live out of a single mixing bowl, free from the tyranny of matching lids. The radio plays a commercial promising a better life through plastics, but you're not so sure. You've seen Carol's smile falter when someone brings Pyrex to a picnic. You know the silent judgment of showing up with potato salad in a recycled margarine tub. These containers are more than vessels. They're currency in the suburban barter economy, proof that you're playing the game. Occasionally, you contemplate the bigger picture. What is all this plastic doing to the world? Will the archaeologists of the future unearth your Tupperware collection and declare this the age of molded polyethylene? Do you have an identity beyond the color of your salad bowl? You shake it off. Existential crisis can wait until after lunch. Eventually, you stuff the last lid precariously into the cupboard, close the door quickly, and hope nothing falls out. You make a note to ask Carol for her famous coleslaw recipe, knowing full well it's just another excuse to buy another bowl. But you don't mind. Not really, because in this corner of suburbia, Tupperware is the glue that holds your social world together. Even if you secretly wish you could just eat straight out of the pot. And so, you prepare for next week's party, rehearsing your burp and your polite laughter. You wonder if the day will come when someone invents a storage system that actually stacks. Until then, you soldier on, one pastel container at a time, drowning in plastic. But at least never alone. You put on lipstick and a sensible dress just to buy bread. The grocer tips his hat, you smile politely, and you try not to scream when someone blocks the cereal aisle with a shopping cart the size of a Buick. This isn't just a trip to the store, it's a full-blown production, an event that requires preparation, choreography, and a level of emotional restraint you didn't know you possessed. The grocery store is your stage, and everyone you meet is both audience and critic. Your hair is set, your purse is armed with a handwritten list and a small arsenal of coupons, and you stride through the automatic doors like you're about to accept an Oscar for best performance in a supporting role. Suburban mother, ongoing. The carts, of course, are always out of alignment. You pick the one with the wobbly wheel that screams in protest at every turn, announcing your arrival to the produce section like a malfunctioning tuba. You smile and nod at Mrs. Robinson, who's inspecting cantaloupes as if they hold the secret to eternal youth. The produce department is the site of silent competition, whose apples are shiniest, whose lettuce crispiest, whose bananas are just the right shade of optimistic yellow. You consult your list. Bread, milk, eggs, the holy trinity of domestic responsibility. But the shelves are an obstacle course, booby-trapped with displays designed to test your resolve. Cookies at child level, newfangled snacks you can't pronounce, and a canned soup pyramid that looks ready to collapse if you so much as glance at it. Every choice is a referendum on your character. Name brand peanut butter? Extravagant? Generic? Are you even trying? There's an unspoken understanding that other mothers are judging your selections. and you find yourself performing your own silent critique as you peek into their carts. The cereal aisle is the real test of patience and manners. It's a corridor of sugar, cartoon mascots, and impossible choices, always blocked by someone whose sole purpose is to deliberate over every box as if breakfast is a sacred ritual. You try to sidestep, but your cart veers left, embedding itself in a display of marshmallows. You apologize, laugh politely, and then watch as your youngest child attempts to liberate a box of Fun Flakes by brute force. You intervene, returning the cereal to its rightful place, while Mrs. Parker gives you that in my day, children-behaved look. You nod, smile, and mentally subtract 10 points from your weekly self-esteem quota. Every so often you run into Marjorie, who greets you with a cheerful wave and a not-so-subtle glance at your shopping list. "Making meatloaf again?" she asks, as if there are any other options. You compare coupons, trade recipes, and quietly judge the state of the potatoes. There's a kind of camaraderie in this, two veterans trading war stories, both hoping to make it out before the after-school rush descends. The checkout line is its own crucible. You unload your groceries with precision, watching as the cashier eyes your purchases and the bagger decides whether to crush your bread or your spirit. There's a split-second decision about gum and magazines, and you resist the urge to buy the latest scandal rag, even though you're dying to know which Hollywood star has let herself go. The woman ahead of you argues over a double coupon, and you smile sympathetically, knowing that one day that will absolutely be you. Outside, you brace yourself for the gauntlet of the parking lot, where cars and carts perform a ballet of near misses. Groceries secured, you touch up your lipstick in the rearview mirror and let yourself breathe for the first time all morning. You made it. You performed. You resisted the lure of store-brand potato chips, survived the marshmallow avalanche, and remembered to buy bread, though you'll probably forget something essential, like toilet paper. Back home, you carry in the bags like trophies from battle. You'll recount your trials to anyone who will listen, knowing that no one truly understands the art, the endurance, the subtle pageantry of grocery shopping in suburbia. But that's all right. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. You'll dress for the role, paste on your smile, and take the stage beneath the fluorescent lights, because in the grand theater of the supermarket, you are always on, and the show must go on. At 10:30, you tune in to see what Lucille Ball is up to. She's making disaster look fun. You laugh, but deep down you know you could out-bumble her any day of the week. There's something sacred about the mid-morning lull. Those rare 20 minutes when the house is quiet and the only company you keep is a cup of cooling coffee and the comforting glow of the television set. You sit, exhaling for the first time since sunrise. The soft whir of the fan and the clatter of last night's dishes your only background noise. This is your therapy, your mini vacation, your mental reset button. While Lucy tries to wrangle a conveyor belt of chocolates or smooth talk her way out of a mess, you sink into the couch cushions, a silent sister in chaos. The ritual is always the same. The TV flickers to life, tubes buzzing, and the living room is bathed in black and white light. Lucy's antics are familiar, yet always surprising. Her wide eyes, her perfect comic timing, her ability to turn total catastrophe into something that ends with laughter and applause. You envy her for that. When your day explodes in flour or laundry soap, nobody claps. There is no audience. Just the dog, looking disappointed, and a mysterious puddle that wasn't there a minute ago. You watch as Lucy schemes and dreams, her problems always larger than life, and her solutions more absurd than anything you'd ever dare. But somehow, she gets away with it. If only real life offered the same laugh track and the same forgiveness. You sip your coffee and imagine what it would be like if, after every mishap, burning the roast, gluing your sleeve to the curtain, or melting a plastic lid in the oven, a raucous crowd cheered you on. Instead, you settle for your own tired giggle and the knowledge that, at least in Lucy's world, chaos always ends in a hug. The commercials are a show of their own. Smiling housewives touting miracle detergents and indestructible cookware, promising lives so frictionless you wonder if they're living on another planet. You jot down the latest slogan, thinking maybe, just maybe, a new kind of floor wax really will change everything. You know it won't, but hope springs eternal. After all, what's modern housewifery, if not a daily exercise in optimistic self-delusion? Sometimes you drift off for a moment, eyes half closed, lulled by the steady rhythm of the show and the warmth of the sun creeping across the carpet. For these brief minutes, you are neither chef, nor maid, nor referee. You're just a person, laughing at the world's messiest redhead. And when Lucy's latest plan goes sideways, you feel less alone in your own daily circus. If she can survive a day at the chocolate factory, you can survive the fallout from the breakfast explosion. But just as quickly as it began, the spell is broken. The phone rings, or the doorbell chimes, or the washing machine emits a sound that means something has gone very wrong. You reluctantly click off the TV, giving Lucy a silent salute. You may not have a director, a script, or a studio audience, but you do have resilience and, more importantly, a sense of humor that's only gotten sharper with each slapstick disaster. You rise from the couch, straighten your skirt, and step back into your technicolor reality. There are chores waiting, errands to run, another round of what's for lunch looming. But you carry a little bit of Lucy with you, a spark of mischief, a dash of determination, and the permission to laugh when life gets messy. In this house, television isn't just background noise, it's a survival tool. It's proof that even when the world goes sideways, you can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going, preferably with a pratfall and a smile. You open the fridge to get the orange juice and notice the gin. Just a splash, you tell yourself. The sun is up, and so are your standards, just barely. In the soft glow of the late morning, as the last echoes of Lucy's laughter fade and the soundtrack of your real life resumes, spoiler, it's mostly laundry and existential dread, you find yourself standing in front of the refrigerator, contemplating your next move. The orange juice is cold and inviting. The bottle of gin is hidden, badly, behind a pitcher of milk and an aggressively optimistic head of lettuce. You hesitate for a moment, weighing your options, but after this morning's parade of chaos, you decide that nobody, not even June Cleaver, would judge you for adding a little oomph to your vitamin C. You pour the juice first, as if doing things in the proper order somehow redeems the indulgence. The gin follows with a silent, satisfying glug. It's not enough to make the walls melt, just enough to take the edge off the piles of laundry and the endless loop of Mom, Where's My that's been playing since sunrise. You take a sip, savoring the sweet tart hit and the little fizz of rebellion that comes from day drinking before noon. It's not a habit, you assure yourself. It's a tradition, at least. That's what you'll tell Marjorie if she ever drops by unannounced. This mid-morning ritual is your own quiet protest against the relentless pace of domestic life. It's less about the alcohol and more about carving out a moment of autonomy in a world where everyone else's needs seem to take priority. You glance at the clock, 10:45 a.m., and wonder if anyone, anywhere, has ever done this in a ball gown. You settle for your housecoat and a sense of mischief. In this small act, you find a bit of freedom, a sliver of control over a schedule that otherwise controls you. Of course, you're discreet. The glass is opaque, the pour modest. If anyone asks, it's just a little pick-me-up, the same euphemism used by generations of women who learned early that the only way to survive endless chores and emotional labor was with the occasional sidecar of gin, sherry, or medicinal brandy. You wonder what your grandmother would say if she saw you now, but you suspect she'd just ask for a splash herself. You sit by the window, cocktail in hand, and let yourself be still for a moment. Outside, the world hums along. The mailman trudges up the walk. The neighbor's sprinkler spins in slow, hypnotic circles. And somewhere a dog barks at a squirrel with Olympic-level commitment. For these few minutes, you're off duty. You're not prepping lunch, mopping floors, or refereeing sibling squabbles. You're simply existing. And that's more than enough. Naturally, the peace doesn't last long. The phone rings. It's Marjorie, wanting to gossip about the mysterious new family on Maple Drive. You chat, swirling your drink, careful not to let any hint of mischief creep into your voice. Just having a late breakfast, you say, and it's not a lie. Just a version of the truth. Eventually, the glass empties, the ice melts, and the day calls you back. You rinse your glass, hide the evidence, and return to your duties with just a little more spring in your step. The chores don't seem quite so endless, the to-do list not so intimidating. You remember that life is meant to be lived, not merely endured, and that sometimes a little secret, especially one with a splash of gin, makes all the difference. So you move on, refreshed, ready for whatever the rest of the day throws at you. If anyone asks why you're smiling, you'll just blame the orange juice. It's the art of the mid-morning cocktail. Subtle, sophisticated, and strictly medicinal at least. That's your story, and you're sticking to it. You gather in the school auditorium for another urgent meeting about the color of the gym mats. Someone brings cookies. You bring a smile and the ability to daydream with your eyes open. The overhead lights buzz with the energy of 100 slightly frazzled parents, each of whom would rather be anywhere else. The folding chairs creak under the weight of collective ennui, and you scan the room, noting the familiar faces. Carol, clipboard clutched like a scepter. Marjorie, dispensing passive-aggressive encouragement. And a handful of fathers, blinking as if they wandered in by accident on the way to the hardware store. You slip into your seat and arrange your face into an expression of interest, which, after this many meetings, takes real muscle memory. There's a ritual to these gatherings. First, the principal's welcome, delivered in a voice so gentle you're convinced he moonlights as a meditation instructor. He thanks everyone for their continued commitment to excellence, which is PTA code for thanks for showing up to debate the color of something nobody will ever notice. Next, the agenda is distributed, several crinkled pages, neatly typed, bristling with topics so minor they could be solved by a coin toss. Your only goal is to make it to any other business without losing your will to live. The first item is always something of earth-shattering importance, like, should the school carnival serve popcorn in red or blue bags? A heated discussion breaks out, voices rising in polite but insistent waves. Someone references a study about the psychological impact of bag color on school spirit. You wonder if there's a study on the psychological impact of PTA meetings on mothers' sanity. Cookies circulate the room, little lifeboats of sugar in a sea of bureaucracy. You take one, nibbling while staring into the middle distance. You drift into a daydream. What if you simply stood up, announced you were moving to Paris, and disappeared in a cloud of powdered sugar? You consider it, just for a moment. Then remember Paris probably has PTA meetings too. Marjorie leans over, whispering, "This could have been a phone call," and you suppress a snort. Carol launches into a 20-minute presentation on why the gym mats must match the school colors. Charts are produced, opinions are voiced. You check your watch and calculate how many minutes you can stare at the ceiling tiles before someone notices. You lose count at 11. Your mind wanders. How many batches of cookies will you be volunteered for this semester? Will you be asked to run the cakewalk again? And if so, will you finally have the nerve to say no? You practice your refusal in your head, knowing full well you'll nod and smile and say, "Of course, happy to help." Resistance, in the world of the PTA, is mostly theoretical. Occasionally, the conversation turns to a genuinely useful topic. bullying, fundraising, or the new librarian who, rumor has it, wears Birkenstocks in winter. But mostly, the meeting spirals back to minutiae. Paper or plastic. Streamers or banners. Whether third graders should be allowed to use glitter. Someone makes a passionate case for more parent engagement, and you try to look engaged without making eye contact, lest you be drafted for yet another committee. By the time the meeting ends, you feel like you've aged a year. The principal thanks you again. Carol hands out sign-up sheets, and everyone moves in slow, resigned formation toward the exit, clutching cookies and colored agendas. You chat politely, swap updates on kids' allergies, and promise to email a recipe you'll definitely forget. You step outside, take a deep breath, and feel the sweet rush of freedom. The air smells of exhaust and possibility. You survived another PTA meeting, a trial of tedium, yes, but also a rite of passage. And as you walk home, you realize you may not care about the gym mats, but you do care about the village raising your children, one excruciating meeting at a time. Besides, next month you're bringing the good cookies. If you have to suffer, you might as well do it with extra chocolate chips. You're convinced your neighbor's house is cleaner, shinier, and somehow always smells like freshly baked bread. You consider scrubbing your ceiling just to keep up. Suburban life in the 1950s isn't just about keeping up with the Joneses. It's about out-scrubbing, outshining, and out-freshening them too. Every morning, the great battle resumes. You versus dust, crumbs, mysterious smudges, and the persistent suspicion that Marjorie next door is secretly operating a commercial bakery and 3 full-time maids. You spritz, you wipe, you dust with an urgency that could only be explained by the possibility that the ladies' auxiliary might arrive at any moment for a surprise coffee. The radio hums in the background, full of cheery jingles for miracle cleansers and waxes, promising to transform your home into a fragrant palace of mid-century virtue. You hum along, wielding your dust cloth with the grim determination of a gladiator. Every time you think you're finished, a rogue sunbeam exposes a new constellation of fingerprints and a gentle drift of lint on the mantel. You try not to take it personally, but the dust seems to be winning. It doesn't help that your neighbor's home is an ongoing legend. Marjorie always answers the door in pressed slacks, pearls, and an apron that looks suspiciously untouched by sauce or grease. Her windows sparkle with a smugness only Windex can provide. Her floors glisten, her baseboards gleam, and her bread emerges from the oven in photogenic perfection. You suspect she may actually use 2 vacuums, one for show, one for actual crumbs. Inside your own house, you alternate between aggressive cleaning and passive-aggressive resentment. The kitchen floor, once the pride of your domain, now mocks you with every sticky spot. The living room carpet is a battleground, pocked with evidence of last night's popcorn binge and this morning's crayon mural. Every child's sock, every shoe print, every stray Lego becomes an existential threat to your sense of order. It's not just cleanliness, it's performance art, with anxiety as your primary audience. You move furniture to vacuum underneath, even though you know nobody in their right mind will ever look there. But what if they do? You scrub grout with a toothbrush, muttering about standards and the right way to fold a towel. You find yourself making up new chores just to feel ahead of the curve, polishing doorknobs, straightening fringe on the throw rugs, and contemplating the merits of ironing pillowcases. Yes, ironing pillowcases. That's how deep this rabbit hole goes. Occasionally, you indulge in a bout of cleaning envy. You imagine Marjorie hosting magazine photographers in her foyer. Or worse, the pastor's wife popping in just to say hello. You sniff the air, praying for a faint whiff of cinnamon, and consider baking bread just for the scent. Spoiler: it's much easier to hide a candle shaped like cinnamon rolls and claim it's the real thing. You even find yourself in the grocery store scrutinizing new cleaning products like some people appraise fine wine. Lemon, lavender, pine. So many choices for the house you're beginning to suspect is alive and resenting you. The commercials promise domestic bliss with just one wipe, but the reality is less bliss and more lower back pain. At the end of a long, soapy day, you step back and survey your domain. It looks good enough. Maybe not Marjorie good, but nobody's calling the health department. You light a scented candle, adjust a cushion, and collapse on the sofa, trying not to notice the dust motes drifting lazily in the afternoon sun. In the end, you realize the real competition is with yourself, your expectations, your need for approval, your quiet hope that someone will finally notice the sparkling faucet. If not, well, at least you can say you survived another day in the endless war on dust. And if the neighbors do drop by, you're ready. Just don't look up at the ceiling. You didn't get to that. Maybe tomorrow. Or maybe you'll finally take Marjorie's advice and just buy everyone cinnamon roll candles for Christmas. The washing machine churns. The house is silent. For a moment, you stare out the window and wonder if this is what astronauts feel like right before liftoff. It's a rare interval, this hush. One that doesn't last. One you only get by accident. Sandwiched between chaos and more chaos. The kids are at school. The husband is off conquering the office. And even the dog has abandoned you for a nap in the sunniest patch of carpet. For a fleeting span of minutes, the only other living thing making noise is the faithful washing machine, laboring away at yet another batch of laundry destined to never be folded and put away at the same time. You lean on the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, staring out at the world. Nothing moves except a neighbor's cat and the shadows from the trees, stretching lazily across your perfectly mown, imperfectly yours lawn. The silence is so deep it almost rings. It's not lonely exactly. It's a sudden, unfamiliar drop in the noise level, and you can actually hear your own thoughts, a mixed blessing given the backlog. Your mind runs through grocery lists, dinner ideas, half-finished arguments you wish you'd handled better, and snippets of PTA drama that have clung to you like dryer lint. Still, there's peace here. For a moment, no one needs anything. No one is asking for a snack, or where their shoes are, or if they can have a quarter for the ice cream truck. The washing machine swishes and you breathe, feeling the tension in your shoulders start to unwind. Just a little. This is the time when you remember who you are under the layers of flour, dust, and parental expectation. You recall there was a person in there before the house was filled with tiny shoes and half-chewed pencils. You find yourself drifting, just for a moment, into daydreams. Maybe you're in Paris, sipping coffee at a street cafe. Or maybe you're curled up with a book in a chair no one else claims. The possibilities are endless in these minutes, and the reality is gently suspended. Of course, the washing machine is your ticking clock. Every cycle is a countdown back to reality. You know the silence will soon be broken. By a phone call, by the clatter of mail through the slot, or by the spin cycle's dramatic crescendo, which shakes the floorboards and startles you out of your reverie every single time. Sometimes you worry you're wasting this rare solitude, but then you realize that's the point. The house is always hungry for your energy, and it will get it soon enough. For now, it can wait. You look around and notice the little things you normally miss. A chipped cup on the windowsill, the pattern of the sunlight, the way the curtains flutter with the smallest breeze. It almost feels like a life outside the rush, a gentle nudge reminding you to enjoy your own company. In this quiet, you sometimes write grocery lists that are more poetry than practicality, or doodle hearts and flowers in the margins of your calendar just because you can. Sometimes, in these quiet stretches, you give yourself permission for tiny acts of rebellion. Maybe a second cup of coffee. Maybe a bite of the good chocolate you hide at the back of the pantry. You might even sit for a whole 5 minutes doing nothing at all, listening to the hum of the house, letting your mind float. These moments are fuel, the invisible kind, the kind that nobody sees but everyone needs. And then, just as quickly as it arrived, the silence is over. The washing machine clicks off with a triumphant ding, demanding your attention. The phone rings, or the doorbell chimes, or you remember the soup simmering on the stove. You sigh, stand, and step back into the rhythm of duty. Laundry to fold, dinner to plan, a life to run. But you carry something with you from the isolation chamber, a pocket of calm, a quiet reminder that in between the loads, the chores, and the relentless noise, you're still here, still breathing, still enough. Even if the next load is towels and hope, you're ready. You attempt a new recipe from Lady's Home Journal that calls for 3 cans of soup, a mysterious loaf, and something called pimento. You make it. Nobody likes it. You eat it anyway. This is the culinary Olympics of the 1950s housewife. Each meal an adventure, every ingredient a roll of the dice. You approach the task with a kind of cautious optimism, armed with the latest magazine clippings and a shopping list written in hopeful cursive. The cookbook assures you this is a crowd pleaser, a savory sensation sure to dazzle your family and guests. You squint at the page, wondering who wrote that copy and if they've ever met your family. You gather your materials: canned cream of mushroom soup, canned cream of chicken soup, and, just to spice things up, canned cream of celery. The recipe calls for loaf, which is never really defined. Is it meatloaf? Bread loaf? Loaf-shaped existential despair? You find something vaguely loaf-adjacent in the fridge and decide it will have to do. The next step is combine with pimento. You're not entirely sure what a pimento is, but it comes in a tiny glass jar and glows with the color and enthusiasm of a traffic light. You add it in, crossing your fingers that it won't stain the cookware. As you mix, the kitchen fills with a smell that's not unpleasant, but definitely unfamiliar. You wonder, for the 50th time, if modern recipes exist mostly to give housewives something to talk about at Tupperware parties. You follow the instructions to the letter, layering ingredients in a casserole dish like a culinary archaeologist, then slide the whole thing into the oven and pray. The magazine says to bake until bubbly, which could mean anywhere from 10 minutes to a nuclear meltdown, so you keep a close eye while nervously sipping yesterday's coffee. There's a strange suspense to this style of cooking. Part game show, part trust fall. Your mind races. Did you drain the loaf? Are you supposed to cover it? Was that too much pimento? Not enough pimento? You resist the urge to open the oven and check, fearing you'll interrupt some critical chemical transformation. In the meantime, you set the table, straightening placemats, and wondering if Martha Stewart will one day invent a dish your children will actually eat. When the timer dings, you pull out your bubbling creation, garnishing it with a single forlorn sprig of parsley for that magazine photo finish. You call everyone to dinner, masking your nerves with a smile. The kids peer suspiciously into the casserole, poking it with their forks as if it might leap out of the dish. Your spouse gives you a look of cautious encouragement. He's seen this movie before. Everyone takes a bite, and you can practically hear the disappointment settle over the table like a fog. There is polite chewing, a forced The children beg for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and your husband quietly asks if there's any leftover meatloaf. You smile, assure them it's an acquired taste, and serve yourself a generous helping, eating every bite. You can't let dinner win. Later, as you scrape untouched casserole into the trash, you reflect on the culinary gamble you take every night. Some days, the recipes pay off. Other times, you end up inventing new uses for leftovers. Casserole's surprise becomes tomorrow's mystery lunch. You make a mental note to stick to something safer next time, maybe spaghetti, or breakfast for dinner, or just plain toast. But deep down, you know you'll try again. There's something oddly thrilling about these experiments, even if they rarely result in applause. You stack the dishes, rinse the pimento stains from the counter, and resolve to never trust a recipe that uses the phrase cream of anything. As you put away the last fork, you wonder if someday your children will remember these meals with affection, or at least with fewer complaints. Until then, you'll keep spinning the wheel, because cooking in the 50s is never boring, always suspicious, and, if nothing else, a chance to say you tried. You fix yourself a sandwich and a glass of milk, but you keep glancing at the clock. It's not even noon, but the bottle of sherry is winking at you from the cabinet. The kitchen, which just a few hours ago throbbed with the chaos of breakfast, now feels like a museum exhibit. Still life with crumbs and regret. You stare at your lunch, 2 slices of bread, a reluctant layer of ham, maybe a slice of cheese if you're feeling extravagant, and wonder how it's possible for food to taste so much like nothing. The milk, cold and nearly flavorless, is poured from a bottle you're not convinced has ever seen a cow. You make a mental note to buy real milk next time, knowing full well you'll forget and grab the same bottle again, because old habits and weirdly synthetic dairy die hard. There's a deep silence to lunch alone. No one to negotiate over the last pickle, no one asking what you're eating, no tiny hands swiping half your meal just as you're about to take a bite. You should savor it, but instead, the quiet makes you squirm. You glance out the window at the empty street, where the only sign of life is a mailman shuffling by, looking just as unenthusiastic about his own sandwich as you are about yours. You try to fill the silence. Maybe you set a book next to your plate, something you've been meaning to read, but the words blur together as your mind drifts to chores left unfinished and errands yet to run. You flip on the radio, hoping for a lively song, but instead get another advertisement for the latest in miracle cleaning powder. You chew, you listen, you check the clock again. Time moves differently during lunch when you're by yourself. Somehow both too slow and too fast, with the next round of housework looming like a cloud on the horizon. Your mind wanders, as it always does. You replay the morning's PTA meeting, mentally adding more wit to your replies. You picture Marjorie down the street, probably slicing cucumber sandwiches with her perfect manicure, or Carol, already prepping for next week's Tupperware extravaganza. You wonder if they ever feel this odd combination of freedom and invisibility, responsible for everything, yet seen by almost no one. The sherry bottle winks at you again, a mischievous sparkle from the back of the cabinet. You debate, just for a moment, the ethics of a lunchtime nip. Surely it's justified, after all. Didn't Julia Child herself say that a little wine makes everything better? You conveniently forget that she usually added hers to the stew, not to her milk glass. Still, it's tempting. The prospect of a little extra warmth, a dash of bravado to get through the mountain of laundry, and the phone call you've been avoiding almost makes you reach for the corkscrew. Almost. Instead, you finish your sandwich in 3 determined bites. Sip the rest of your milk, and let yourself imagine a different kind of lunch, perhaps in a bustling cafe, sunlight streaming through big windows, your plate brimming with something you didn't have to assemble yourself. Maybe, in another life, there's laughter and conversation, a friend who orders dessert for the table. For now, you make do with a handful of potato chips and the silent company of the kitchen clock. You rinse your plate and cup, placing them carefully in the drying rack, because even when no one is watching, some habits stick. The rest of the house waits, full of dust and distant demands. You smooth your skirt, give the sherry bottle one last, longing glance, and head back into the fray. Lunch alone may not be glamorous or memorable, but it's yours, an island of quiet in a day that doesn't always offer much else. And as you return to your duties, you carry with you a strange, small pride. You got a meal to yourself, however brief, and maybe, tomorrow, you'll let yourself have that splash of sherry, strictly for culinary inspiration, of course. It's 1:11 p.m., you're already tired again, and you've started referring to your second cup of coffee as dessert. The phone rings, telemarketer. You hang up and consider a nap on the ironing board. This is the hour when time stands still. The sun outside glares a little too brightly through the kitchen window, and your body seems to have reached a secret accord with gravity. The coffee, once a promise of energy, now tastes like bitter hope. You stare at your mug, considering the physics of pouring 1 cup directly into your veins. But there's laundry to fold, socks to match, and the kind of dust bunny lurking under the sofa that you suspect might be gaining sentience. You shuffle to the living room and contemplate the couch. It's inviting. Too inviting. If you sit down, you know you won't get back up. And besides, the throw pillows are staged with a perfection that can't be disturbed. The ironing board, on the other hand, is both flat and available, and you briefly fantasize about stretching out across it, pressing yourself wrinkle-free along with the blouses. You wonder if anyone would notice or care if you did. The dog certainly wouldn't. The midday slump is not a modern invention. You imagine women throughout history, all the way back to medieval peasants, slumping by the hearth at precisely this hour, gnawing on turnips and daydreaming about better beds. In your case, the turnips have been replaced by a stale cookie filched from the top shelf of the pantry. You eat it slowly, chewing over your regrets and your to-do list in equal measure. The house is oddly quiet, save for the rhythmic ticking of the kitchen clock, which has become your greatest nemesis. Every tick is a tiny reminder that the afternoon is barely underway. The next phase of chores looms: vacuuming, preparing dinner, and dealing with the never-ending pile of school forms that seem to multiply when you're not looking. You eye the stack of paperwork and decide that tomorrow is a perfectly legitimate filing system. Your second cup of coffee is already lukewarm. You try to dress it up with a splash of milk, maybe a sprinkle of sugar, anything to make it taste like a reward instead of a necessity. The caffeine hits your bloodstream, but all it does is sharpen your sense of futility. The phone rings again. Another telemarketer, who you politely inform that now is not a good time. Meaning, of course, that there is no good time. You wander to the window and look outside at the world, which seems to be moving on without you. The mailman waves. You wave back, both of you complicit in this slow afternoon dance. You see Marjorie across the street, meticulously trimming her hedges. Her energy, as always, feels vaguely threatening. You tell yourself she probably took a nap, or something stronger. By now, your eyelids are heavy, your motivation's sagging. You think about all the motivational quotes stitched onto pillows and painted on wooden boards. Live, laugh, love, seize the day, bless this mess. Right now, the only thing you want to seize is a blanket and a dark room. You contemplate the logistics of an adult nap. Do you risk wrinkling your dress? Is it irresponsible? What if someone calls? You compromise by sitting very still and staring at the clock until it's time to move again. Eventually, you muster the strength to stand, fueled by the knowledge that someone, somewhere, once survived a day like this without the help of espresso. You sigh, adjust your hair, and return to your duties, half awake, half dreaming, fully determined to make it to dinner time without falling face first into the laundry basket. If nothing else, you promise yourself a small treat later, a square of chocolate maybe, or just a few minutes with your eyes closed. Because in the war against the midday slump, sometimes survival looks a lot like surrender, and that's perfectly okay. Every so often, you move the couch 3 inches to the left just to feel alive. You buy new curtains and pretend it'll change everything. Spoiler, it won't. Still, there's a peculiar magic in the act. One moment, You're standing in the middle of the living room, hands on hips, eyes narrowed in deep existential reflection. The next, you're wedging your hip against the end table, shoving the sofa into a new relationship with the rug, and pretending it's all part of a grand interior design vision. The truth is, you're just trying to stir the air. To convince yourself that if the room is different, maybe the day will be too. The home decor section of the department store is your siren song. Rows of patterned pillows, swatches of cheerful drapery, and endless displays of ceramic animals call to you with the promise of transformation. You purchase a set of sunny yellow curtains, certain that this will be the moment everything shifts, the mood, the luck, your very soul. You bring them home, wrestle with the rods, stand back to admire your work, and realize with a sigh that nothing fundamental has changed. The dog still sheds, the mail still piles up, and the living room, while slightly brighter, is still the headquarters for chaos. But hope springs eternal, and so you continue to plot tiny domestic revolutions. A lamp moved here, a stack of magazines shifted there, a new bowl of plastic fruit for the dining table. There's a ritual to it all, a gentle illusion of control. Rearranging furniture becomes a substitute for rearranging your life. You tell yourself that if the chairs just face a different way, maybe you'll finally read that book, or the kids will do their homework at the table, or your husband will notice the color of the walls. You scan Better Homes and Gardens for inspiration, rooms flooded with light, color-coordinated bookshelves, coffee tables without a single sticky ring. You cut out a photo of a perfect living room and tape it inside a cupboard for moral support, even as you know the only people who live like that are models, not mortals. The magazine suggests arranging flowers for a pop of freshness, so you do, placing a half-wilted bouquet in the good vase and hoping nobody looks too closely at the stems. The pursuit of decor is part therapy, part self-deception. You become a connoisseur of throw pillows, a critic of dust, a visionary of shelf arrangements. You convince yourself that a new slipcover is a life event and that painting a wall eggshell instead of ivory will alter the course of history. You grow passionate opinions about knickknacks and nearly come to blows with yourself over whether the credenza really belongs under the window. Of course, the rest of the family doesn't notice. The children hurdle over ottomans with Olympic ambition. The dog claims the freshly positioned armchair with muddy paws, and your spouse sits in the exact same spot, facing the exact same direction, oblivious to your silent revolution. "Did you do something different in here?" he asks, blinking up from the paper. You smile, equal parts exasperated and amused, and say, "Just a little, but it's not really about them. It's about you, a small act of defiance against monotony, a reminder that you can still shape your world, even in 3-inch increments." Rearranging furniture is the housewife's version of a road trip. You can't go far, but you can change the scenery, and for a little while that's enough. At the end of your efforts, you collapse onto the newly relocated couch, admiring the room's minor evolution. The view may be familiar, but the feeling is new. It's a tiny, triumphant moment, a quiet victory against the sameness of suburban days. And if you ever get tired of this arrangement, well, there's always tomorrow, and another 3 inches to the left. The neighbors think you're a saint, but only you know where the good bourbon is. You have your secrets. Everyone does. Some are chocolate. Some are 80 proof. The world of the 1950s housewife is all about appearances, starched aprons, crisp curtains, spotless counters, and a smile that could survive a nuclear test. But beneath the gleam of waxed linoleum and the echo of polite hellos, there's a quiet undercurrent of rebellion. Every woman on the block has her own little stash, her own treat tucked away behind the flour canister or at the very back of the freezer. It's an open secret. You can't pour from an empty cup, and sometimes that cup is filled with a little more than Maxwell House. Maybe yours is the bourbon, hidden naturally behind the dusty can of yams that nobody's touched since the Eisenhower inauguration. Or maybe it's a box of decadent, waxy chocolates stashed in the sewing basket, camouflaged by buttons and half-finished mending. The good stuff. The stuff you don't share with the kids or even your husband, unless the day's been truly catastrophic. When the house finally goes quiet and you're left with the tick of the kitchen clock and the faint whir of the fridge, you slip away for your private moment. A tiny square of fudge, a forbidden sip, a bite of something sweet you don't have to explain or defend. It's not about excess, it's about survival. The daily performance is relentless. Everyone expects you to be wholesome, cheerful, tireless. But even the best actresses need a green room. Yours just happens to be the pantry at 2:30 p.m., door cracked open for light and plausible deniability. You nibble, you sip, you savor. For 3 minutes, you are nobody's mother, wife, or committee chair. You're just a person, tasting freedom in the form of bourbon caramel or a purloined truffle. Of course, you're not alone. Carol next door insists she never touches anything stronger than ginger ale, but you saw her giggling at the block party with a mug that smelled suspiciously medicinal. Marjorie never eats sugar after noon, yet there's a telltale smudge of cocoa on her collar every time she hosts bridge club. Even Mrs. Henderson, who collects church pamphlets like trading cards, has been known to sneak a lemon drop, or 3, during choir practice. These secrets are not just vices, but lifelines. They are tiny islands of pleasure in a sea of relentless duty. You might even find yourself confiding in the dog, whose silence is guaranteed. Some days the ritual is elaborate. A glass of sherry in a teacup, sipped with pinky raised while you read the society page and fantasize about running away to Paris. Other days, you just eat 3 spoonfuls of marshmallow fluff straight from the jar, standing in the glow of the refrigerator. Trying to remember the last time you bought something just for yourself. You keep your stashes well hidden, moving them whenever you sense someone getting too close, children, husband, or the nosy neighbor who just needs to borrow a cup of sugar. It's a strategic operation worthy of a Cold War spy. You rotate hiding spots, invent decoy treats, and maintain an air of innocence at all times. You are both the mastermind and the beneficiary of your own secret supply chain. In the end, these little indulgences aren't about breaking rules. They're about bending them just enough to stay sane. They're a gentle protest against a world that asks you to be perfect and then raises an eyebrow if you slip. They're proof that you're still here, still yourself, beneath the starch and smiles. The bourbon is not just bourbon, it's a symbol of autonomy. The chocolate isn't just chocolate. It's a love letter to the part of you that nobody else sees, so you raise a hidden glass to yourself, the patron saint of secret vices. Tomorrow you'll go back to being a paragon of virtue, but tonight you toast your own survival, one sweet, boozy, unapologetic secret at a time. The door slams open at 3:07 p.m. and all bets are off. Shoes fly, voices escalate, and you realize the only thing louder than children is children with opinions. In an instant, the stillness of your carefully arranged afternoon shatters. The serene living room, momentarily museum-worthy, with its color-coordinated pillows and recently dusted coffee table, becomes a war zone. Backpacks are flung like sandbags against enemy fire. Jackets, hats, and the occasional science project scatter across the floor, each one containing more crumbs than a bakery after closing. You try to greet each child warmly, but there's barely time for hello before you're fielding a barrage of simultaneous requests and grievances. "Where's my snack?" is the opening volley. "Can I go to Jenny's?" follows right on its heels. "Why do I have to do my homework first?" comes from a voice already 2 rooms away. The dog, sensing opportunity, darts among the chaos, hoping to snag a stray cracker or 2. You try to regain control, but it's like herding cats who've just finished a double espresso. The kitchen, which survived lunch in relative peace, is suddenly ground zero for negotiations. Someone wants cookies. Someone else claims starvation unless they get chips, and at least one child insists that they are, in fact, allergic to the only fruit you have in the house. You attempt to broker a deal. Apple slices with peanut butter, graham crackers with the good jelly, carrot sticks for the health-minded or the desperate. Every offer is met with dramatic sighs or eye rolls worthy of the local theatre troupe. You enforce a brief truce by issuing snacks with the solemnity of a UN peacekeeper. The television blares in the background, cartoons dueling with shouted spelling words and the relentless tap of a pencil against the table. Homework descends upon the household like a late afternoon fog. Someone can't find a worksheet. Someone else needs poster board you were never told to buy. The oldest insists she doesn't need help, then dramatically requests your presence to review her essay just in case. The youngest asks you how to spell hippopotamus for reasons unclear to anyone, including herself. Just as you think you've established order, the squabbling begins. Who sat where, who ate what, who called whom a doo-doo head, and whether that's a legitimate insult or grounds for a family summit. You step in, referee by necessity, and dole out your best wisdom. If you can't say something nice, write it in your diary. Nobody laughs, but the threat of chores is enough to quiet the crowd for 10 blessed seconds. The house, now alive with energy and noise, feels at once too small and too full. You take a mental step back and try to see it as a sign of life. A home where voices rise because people care enough to argue over monopoly rules or who got the bigger cookie. You remind yourself that one day, the silence will return, and you'll miss the chaos more than you can imagine. At some point, the tide begins to ebb. Homework gets finished, snacks get eaten, and the siblings drift from battle to uneasy alliance over a shared TV show or a game in the backyard. The dog, full of contraband goldfish crackers, finally curls up for a nap. You wipe down the counter for the 1,000th time and glance at the clock, surprised at how quickly the afternoon has vanished in a blur of voices, crumbs, and small triumphs. You pour yourself a glass of water, or maybe something a little stronger if nobody's looking, and exhale. The return of the children is always chaos, but it's also the heartbeat of the day, the reminder that your house is lived in, loved in, and just loud enough to make you grateful for bedtime. Your husband comes home, and suddenly it's time for martinis and small talk. You pour drinks, pass the olives, and practice the ancient art of smiling with your eyes. The sacred ritual of cocktail hour descends on the house like clockwork, a moment as carefully choreographed as a Broadway finale, except with more gin and slightly less jazz hands. The front door creaks open, the day's tension trailing in behind the clack of polished shoes on linoleum. For a brief second, you almost expect an invisible audience to applaud as your husband appears, suit just a touch rumpled, tie slightly askew, ready to exchange the burdens of the office for the burdens of home. The air shifts, and you find yourself smoothing your hair, adjusting your blouse, slipping into your hostess persona like a well-worn sweater. The kitchen, still haunted by the ghosts of homework and after-school chaos, is quickly transformed. Children are banished, gently, to their rooms or the backyard. Cartoons flicker on in the den, and you collect your wits along with the cocktail shaker. It's not just about the drinks, it's about drawing a line between workday and evening, no matter how blurry the boundary sometimes feels. Martini glasses clink softly as you pull them down, a tiny act of ceremony in a world ruled by repetition. You scoop the ice, measure the gin, and do your best not to flinch when your husband suggests just a little more this time. The olives are skewered with practiced hands, and there's a small, satisfying sense of victory when you don't spill a single drop. The first sip is always bracing, sharp and cold, the liquid version of a reset button. You can feel the day's stress start to dissolve, or at least rearrange itself into something manageable. You settle onto the couch together, a pair of weary warriors fresh from different battlefields. The conversation starts with the familiar exchange. How was your day? Anything exciting happen? You trade stories. Here's about traffic, office politics, The new guy in accounting who microwaves fish. Yours about PTA drama. The child's impossible spelling list. The ongoing war against dust. It's equal parts routine and ritual, with just enough humor and sighs to remind you that you're on the same team, even if you're both still playing defense. Of course, cocktail hour is as much performance as it is pleasure. You smile with your eyes, one of those ancient, semi-magical skills passed down through generations of wives and mothers. You laugh in the right places, offer witty observations, and gracefully avoid any mention of the laundry mountain threatening to topple in the next room. Your husband relaxes a little, the hard lines of his day softening in the golden light, and the comfortable murmur of radio jazz in the background. Meanwhile, you quietly tally the invisible mental labor. What's for dinner? Did you remember to sign that permission slip? Is there enough milk for breakfast? Or will you be making an emergency grocery run before sunrise? Still, for this small window of time, the world feels lighter, the to-do list a little less intimidating. If the drinks run out before the conversation does, you shake up a second round, less measured, a little more daring. Sometimes, if you're both in the right mood, you play cards or even dance, swaying to the tinny sounds of the record player while the dog looks on with mild suspicion. Other nights, the quiet stretches, and you're both content to simply sit, martinis in hand, letting the silence do the heavy lifting. As the sky dims and dinner calls, cocktail hour winds down. You pack away the shaker, rinse the glasses, and call the kids to the table, your smile still lingering, even as the evening's real work begins. The magic of martinis and small talk may be fleeting, but it's enough. A ritual of togetherness, a gentle buffer between the outside world and the little universe you've built inside these four walls. And if anyone ever asks, you'll swear it really was 5 o'clock. Somewhere, you set the table, serve dinner, and listen as your family debates who gets the last roll. Someone spills milk. You try not to weep openly. Dinner time in suburbia is not the elegant, candlelit affair the magazines promise. It's an ongoing experiment in sociology. A controlled chaos where food is flung, grievances are aired, and your patience is tested on an hourly basis. You lay out the plates with the hope that tonight, maybe, everyone will eat what's in front of them. You even use the good napkins, hoping to send a silent signal. Let's all just try to be civilized for 15 minutes. Of course, those hopes evaporate faster than the gravy on the potatoes. The first sound is the scrape of chairs and the thud of feet as everyone jockeys for their favorite spot. Siblings squabble over who has the better fork, who gets the blue cup, and who was sitting there first. You pass around platters, casserole bubbling suspiciously, vegetables artfully disguised with cheese, and the ever-controversial dinner rolls. The rolls are gone in 60 seconds, sparking negotiations that would impress the United Nations. She had 2. No, you did. I just touched it. That's not the same as eating it. You consider offering to bake more. Then remember what happened last time. The fire alarm, the charred hockey pucks, the lingering smell of despair. Some nights you manage real conversation, but most nights it's a jumble of complaints and confessions. Do I have to eat this? What is this green stuff? I think my chicken is looking at me. The pickiest child stages a dramatic protest, rearranging food into a performance art piece entitled Still Life with Peas and Reluctance. Your spouse, who just this morning claimed to eat anything, now finds himself not really in a meatloaf mood. You try not to take it personally, but the casserole is wilting under the scrutiny. Just as you attempt to redirect the conversation, how was everyone's day? Someone knocks over a glass of milk, and the resulting flood rivals the Nile in both speed and scale. You leap for the napkins, deploying them like sandbags. Your youngest stares at the spreading puddle, utterly unbothered. You remind yourself, not for the first time, that at least it's milk and not grape juice. Silver linings, you think grimly, blotting at the tablecloth with whatever's left of your dignity. Some nights, you get glimpses of the dream. Laughter over a shared joke, a proud story about a spelling test, a genuine thank you for dessert. Other nights, it's just a blur of utensils, size, and arguments about whether dessert counts as a food group. You look around and realize everyone is growing up right before your eyes, bickering, sure, but also learning, connecting, becoming their own strange, lovable selves. The dog sits under the table, the silent winner of every food battle. Crumbs rain down like manna. You've stopped enforcing the no feeding the dog rule, mostly because you're outnumbered. And he's earned it by surviving 3 rounds of musical chairs and a near miss with the casserole. Finally, plates are cleared, some licked clean, some nearly untouched. You scrape leftovers into containers that may or may not fit in the refrigerator and begin the ritual of washing up. The kitchen is a battlefield, the table a museum of spilled milk and crumpled napkins, but you find a strange comfort in it all. You made a meal. You fed your people. You got everyone to sit down at the same table, even if only for a few chaotic minutes. As you wipe the last streak of mashed potato from the chair and turn out the dining room light, you allow yourself a private moment of pride. The dinner table drama is real, it's relentless, and somehow you're still standing. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Rolls, milk, and all. The kids are finally in bed, so you play bridge, watch Ed Sullivan, or just stare at the wall, wondering if the wall stares back. This is the golden hour. Or at least that's what the magazines call it, those precious post-bedtime minutes where the house is quiet. The furniture finally stays put, and nobody is demanding a snack. You can almost hear the sigh of relief from the floorboards. The dishes are done, the toys are corralled into their bins, and there's a stillness that feels both earned and unfamiliar. You perch on the couch, a mug of something warm, or a glass of something stronger, in hand, ready for whatever passes as fun for grown-ups in this era of avocado green appliances and very suspicious aspic. If it's a cards night, you break out the bridge set or maybe a battered deck of Go Fish if you're feeling less ambitious. The living room transforms into an arena of friendly competition with laughter, light-hearted cheating, and the sort of running commentary that would make a sports announcer proud. Partners are chosen with care. Nobody wants to team up with Uncle Harold, who counts cards and gloats even when he loses. The stakes are low, the jokes are recycled, and yet, in the soft lamplight, there's real comfort in the ritual. There's something about the shuffling of cards and the gentle clink of glasses that makes you feel, for a few hours, like you're living in a grown-up world again. If it's a TV night, you all pile onto the sofa, jockeying for the good spot, the one with the least lumps. The TV set glows with the promise of variety hours and sitcoms, the canned laughter as soothing as a lullaby. Ed Sullivan's parade of plate spinners, comedians, and acrobats feels both predictable and miraculous, a little window into a bigger, weirder world. You marvel at how the whole family can be hypnotized by a man who barely moves his lips. Commercials play for cigarettes and soap, and you hum along with jingles you'll never forget. For a half hour, you can turn off your brain, let the noise wash over you, and not worry about anything more complicated than whether Topo Gigio will make an appearance. On quieter nights, you forgo the bridge and the TV and simply let yourself stare at the wall. There's no shame in it. Sometimes, the best form of entertainment is doing nothing at all, just sitting, letting your thoughts drift, and noticing the patterns in the wallpaper you've been threatening to replace for years. The room feels different after dark, less like a stage, more like a sanctuary. You listen to the house settle, the pipes creak, the refrigerator sigh. For a moment, you allow yourself to daydream about trips you'll take, rooms you'll redecorate, stories you'll tell at the next Tupperware party. You watch the shadows grow long, and wonder if the wall is as relieved as you are that another day is done. Sometimes your spouse sits beside you, and you share a quiet conversation about nothing and everything. How fast the kids are growing, the price of bread, the odd things the neighbors do. Other times, you sit in companionable silence, each lost in your own thoughts, both grateful for the calm. No matter what form it takes, this little window of time is as vital as vitamins. It's a pause before bed, a bridge between the duties of the day and the promise of sleep. You know that tomorrow will bring a new round of chores, noise, and roles disappearing before you get one. But for now, there's only the soft glow of the TV, the click of cards, and the gentle reminder that life, for all its absurdity, still holds moments of peace. And if the wall ever does start staring back, well, at least you'll have company. It's late. You've survived another day. You pour a tiny splash of something just to help you sleep, and decide tomorrow you'll drink less. You won't. This is the private, whisper-quiet moment at the end of a long, jangly day, a ritual so subtle you almost convince yourself it doesn't count. The kitchen, once bustling with the controlled chaos of meals and snacks and negotiations for just one more cookie, is finally silent. The overhead light casts a warm, sleepy glow on the countertops, and the whole house has sunk into a kind of peaceful disarray. You tiptoe into the pantry or to the back of the cabinet, extracting your secret bottle, the one hidden behind the emergency cake mix and the ancient tin of baking powder. Tonight it's sherry, or maybe bourbon, something soft and amber, something with the promise of warmth. You don't pour much, just a finger or two, not enough to count as drinking, but just enough to feel the edges of the day soften. It's not about the buzz. It's about the signal, a gentle punctuation mark that says, "Enough, you made it, time to let go." You cradle your glass and move through the darkened living room. The TV flickers with the last of the late-night shows, murmuring softly to itself, as if it too is winding down. The dog lifts its head, eyes you with sleepy approval, and decides that your nightcap ritual is a perfectly valid reason to stay awake a few moments longer. You take a seat, pulling your knees up and letting the exhaustion settle in. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the kitchen clock, and the distant, muffled sound of a child talking in their sleep, this is the chorus that tucks you in. Sipping slowly, you let your mind drift. Maybe you replay the highlights of the day, a half-successful dinner, a near miss with a glass of spilled milk, a joke that actually landed at the dinner table. Maybe you replay the less-than-stellar moments too, the raised voice, the thing you wish you hadn't said, the to-do list that only ever seems to grow. But with each sip, the sharpness fades, replaced by a kind of gentle forgiveness you don't often grant yourself in the glare of daytime. Tomorrow will be another marathon, but for now, you're off the clock. There's a long history of nightcaps, you tell yourself, as if reciting from a bedtime story. Medieval monks had their mead. Victorian ladies their medicinal port. Your grandmother, her mysterious bottle of drambuie she always called cough syrup. You're simply keeping tradition alive. There's comfort in the thought that across time and space, countless others have ended their days this way. Quiet, contemplative, alone but not lonely, you make resolutions, soft, sleepy ones. Tomorrow you'll skip the sherry. Tomorrow you'll start fresh. Only coffee and water. Walks around the block, early to bed, early to rise. But as every housewife since time immemorial has known, tomorrow is a moving target, and tonight deserves its own reward. You promise yourself you'll try, but in your heart, you know you'll be back here again, glass in hand, searching for solace at the bottom of the bottle. The drink is gone too soon. You rinse the glass, return it to its hiding spot, and switch off the lights. The house sighs, as if in solidarity, and you make your way to bed with the weight of another day behind you and just a glimmer of gratitude in your chest. The nightcap isn't an indulgence. It's a love letter to yourself, a whispered well done that nobody else can give. You slip beneath the covers, head heavy and heart lighter, already halfway to sleep. Tomorrow's worries can wait. Tonight, you rest. No guilt, no shame, just the soft promise of another sunrise and, perhaps, another tiny splash to help you greet it. Why not? Your dreams are vivid, partly because of the sherry, partly because you're haunted by recipes from the Better Homes test kitchen. You wake up sweaty, but your hair is still perfect. There's something about the hush of a 1950s night that stirs up the strangest visions. The house finally quiet. The chores, mostly, finished, and your body drifting somewhere between deep sleep and gentle denial. You slip into a kaleidoscopic landscape where nothing is quite as it should be. Here, in the technicolor twilight of your subconscious, the rules of the real world melt away, only to be replaced by a new set written in gelatin and anxiety. You find yourself at a neighborhood potluck, standing in front of a buffet table that stretches to infinity. The centerpiece is a three-tiered jello mold, lime on the bottom, orange in the middle, and some kind of beige mystery on top. It wobbles ominously, as if it knows what you did to that casserole last week. Carol and Marjorie are there too, their smiles just a touch too wide, both holding clipboards and scorecards. The judges, you clutch your contribution, a questionable tuna noodle surprise, and pray it isn't the first dish tasted. Suddenly, you're at a Tupperware party, except everyone is dressed like Lucille Ball, and the only way to leave is to successfully burp every container in the room. The pressure mounts. You struggle with pastel lids, your fingers sticky with anxiety and marshmallow fluff. The women around you stare, lips pursed, eyebrows arched, as if waiting for you to crack, or at least spill the potato salad. You try to escape, but your heels are glued to the linoleum, and the hostess insists you must first answer a riddle about the correct use of pimento. Sometimes your dreams take a culinary turn. You are asked to prepare dinner for the entire PTA with only the contents of your pantry. 3 cans of cream of mushroom soup, half a box of cornflakes, and a jar of maraschino cherries. The oven laughs, the mixer hisses, and the recipe book seems to have a mind of its own. Every page is a new horror, a ham suspended in aspic, a salad featuring mayonnaise and gelatin, a family favorite made entirely out of things nobody in your family will eat. The clock ticks louder and louder. Will you finish before the doorbell rings? Then there are the judgment dreams, the ones where the front doorbell rings at dawn and the entire neighborhood pours in to see if your house is clean. Marjorie runs her finger along your baseboards. Carol inspects your linen closet. Mrs. Henderson actually sniffs your curtains. You realize in horror that the vacuum is still in the hallway and there's a dust bunny the size of a poodle under the sofa. You wake with a gasp, reaching instinctively for your apron and mentally composing a list of chores before you even realize you're safe in bed. But not all dreams are nightmares. Some nights, you dream of escape. A beach with no sand in your swimsuit. A hotel room where someone else makes the beds. A kitchen stocked with food that cooks itself, and a dishwasher that actually dries the glasses. In these moments, you feel weightless, free from casseroles and committees, from jello and judgment, and through it all, your hair remains perfect. The magic of the 1950s bouffant. It survives wind, rain, existential crisis, and even the technicolor gauntlet of your own subconscious. You wake up in a tangle of sheets, sweating beneath layers of blankets, ready to face another day of suburban survival. You take a moment to laugh at your own absurdity, because if you can't find humor in a world ruled by jello molds, where can you? You smooth your hair, slip on your slippers, and head for the kitchen, ready to do it all over again. After all, in suburbia, even your dreams have a dress code, and tonight, you nailed it. The alarm goes off. You start over. Maybe, just maybe, you'll skip the drink today. but the bottle in the cupboard just winks at you. Again, the day begins as it always does. Not with a triumphant leap out of bed, but with the slow, reluctant negotiation between your warm blankets and the cold, unavoidable truth of another morning in suburbia. The radio blares, the sunlight creeps past the curtains, and the to-do list, yesterday's, today's, tomorrow's, buzzes somewhere behind your eyes before you've even put your feet on the floor. The house is quiet, but it's the charged silence of a stage just before the curtain rises. The props are in place, the waiting coffee pot, the scattered socks, the breadcrumbs from last night's snack. You sigh, stretch, and start the day's performance. The children are up soon after, their energy a mix of hunger, dreams, and the faint hope of avoiding chores. You nudge them through breakfast, shuffling cereal bowls and burnt toast with the weary grace of a short-order cook. Your spouse appears in the doorway, already dressed for the day's battles, and you exchange the same familiar greetings. The daily script, unchanged, reassuring in its routine. Did you sleep? A little. Need anything? Coffee. You go through the motions, lunchboxes packed, backpacks zipped, shoes found, hair brushed. Sometimes it feels like you're moving through molasses. Other days like you're chasing a bus that left 5 minutes ago. Either way, the momentum builds, and you're propelled forward on a wave of habit and necessity. The house empties, at least for a while, and you stand for a moment in the echoing quiet, listening to the tick of the kitchen clock, the low purr of the refrigerator, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. The chores await, as they always do, scattered through the house like clues in a never-ending scavenger hunt. The same stains on the same shirts, the same dishes in the same sink, the same debate about whether today is the day to finally clean under the beds. You find yourself narrating your own movements, as if the invisible camera crew from your dreams is still rolling. Will she finally conquer the closet? Will she remember to buy more milk? The answer, more often than not, is almost. You promise yourself you'll make today different. Maybe you'll have salad for lunch instead of a sandwich. Maybe you'll read a chapter of that book you started last fall. Maybe you'll ignore the bottle's wink and power through on coffee alone. You believe it, right up until the phone rings, the laundry buzzer sounds, or the dog throws up on the rug. Then you laugh, pour another cup, and soldier on, the optimistic resolve dissolving like sugar in hot tea. Afternoon comes, with its familiar rhythm of returns. Children spilling through the door, stories tumbling out of their mouths, complaints and victories and empty lunchboxes in hand. There's dinner to plan, homework to check, small dramas to navigate. And when the sun goes down, you find yourself in the same kitchen, at the same counter, staring at the same cupboard. The bottle, still winking, hasn't moved an inch, but somehow it knows your name. You tell yourself, tomorrow, for sure, as you pour just a splash into your glass. You carry on, as all the women before you did and all the ones beside you still do, finding humor in the repetition, small joys in the familiar, and stubborn comfort in rituals that make the cycle bearable. It's not just survival, it's a kind of art. The routine, the chaos, the quiet rebellion of pouring a little more or a little less. Each morning a new beginning, each night an exhausted triumph. You tuck yourself in, dreams waiting, hair still perfect. And as the alarm sets itself for another day, you smile. The cycle continues, and so do you. Once a month, you gather with the other ladies of distinction to eat identical casseroles, judge each other's outfits, and try not to get caught rolling your eyes. The conversation is so polite you could spread it on a cracker. But underneath every darling, that's lovely, there's the silent competition to see who will cave and spike their iced tea first. The invitations arrive with a flourish, a delicate card tucked into your mailbox, promising an afternoon of fellowship and fine dining. You RSVP with a mixture of dread and anticipation, mentally rifling through your closet for something appropriate, something that says, "I tried, but not, I'm trying too hard." The day arrives, and you run a final check in the mirror. Pearls in place, hair set like spun sugar, a smile so fixed it feels like you borrowed it from a department store mannequin. Upon arrival, you're greeted by the unmistakable aroma of creamed casseroles, perfumed hand lotion, and the underlying tang of anxiety. The host greets you at the door, beaming with the brittle enthusiasm of someone who's been cleaning since dawn and is still not convinced the bathroom towels are guest-ready. You enter the dining room and are struck by the sheer uniformity. 6 identical Pyrex dishes arranged in formation, each sporting a potato salad with its own secret twist. One has paprika, another has a dash of something special. Spoiler, it's more mayonnaise. The fashion parade begins in earnest. Mrs. Henderson is in florals, again. Carol, never one to be outdone, sports a matching hat and gloves, her shoes so pointy you're convinced they double as self-defense. Marjorie shows up late, claiming car trouble, though everyone knows she just wanted to make an entrance. You exchange compliments, all of them technically sincere but delivered with the sharp-edged grace of a fencing match. "Oh, I just adore your brooch. That color is so flattering on you, darling." You counter with a "thank you. I wish I could wear that shade, but I'd look like a carrot." The points are tallied, silently, behind blinking lashes. Lunch is served, and everyone hovers between dainty nibbles and full-on potato salad warfare. Conversation turns to safe topics. New recipes, local sales, the scandalous price of eggs. But underneath the gentle gossip, there's a hum of competitive energy. Who has the fluffiest rolls? Whose Jell-O salad sets the fastest? Who will admit, out loud, that she used instant pudding in her dessert? No one, of course. Not until the 3rd round of iced tea and a slightly tipsy confession that maybe, just maybe, homemade is a state of mind. You watch as the host's cat weaves through the table legs, a silent judge and occasional thief of dropped bits. The laughter grows louder, and so does the collective willpower to keep up the performance. You spot Carol surreptitiously topping off her tea from a flask in her purse, and a ripple of relief runs through the room. The race is over. The first to spike her drink is the unofficial winner. And you all pretend not to notice, just grateful someone had the courage to go first. The meal winds down with obligatory compliments on every dish, a group promise to swap recipes, and the time-honored exchange of leftovers, each Pyrex carefully wrapped and labeled, destined for the back of the fridge until guilt or curiosity forces it into rotation. The gathering breaks up slowly, with air kisses and faint promises to meet up soon. As you leave, you feel a peculiar sense of accomplishment, mixed with the relief of a gladiator who's survived another round. At home, you kick off your shoes, slip off the pearls, and collapse on the couch, grateful for the blessed silence. The ladies' club luncheon is over for another month. You've peacocked, you've smiled, you've survived, and next time you vow you'll be the one with the flask. You flip through the Sears catalogue with the fervour of a gambler about to hit the jackpot. Ordering new sheets or a labour-saving device is the only excitement you're legally allowed before dinner. And for 5 glorious minutes, you imagine a world where a blender can actually fix your life. The catalogue arrives like a gift from a parallel universe, one where every kitchen is spotless, every child's smile has all its teeth, and every woman floats through her home in kitten heels and a fresh apron, untroubled by spilled grape juice or existential dread. You cradle the thick, glossy tome in your lap, feeling the heft of endless possibility, and settle into your favorite chair, ready to chase the fleeting thrill of consumer hope. You begin with the bedding section, drifting among page after page of pastel sheets and aggressively cheerful floral comforters. You run your finger over the pictures, picturing a bedroom where the only lumps are in the pillows, not in your life. Will the new non-iron perma press set truly spare you hours at the ironing board? Or will it, like every other miracle, somehow make more work? You circle 3 sets with your ballpoint pen, knowing you'll only ever buy one. But the act of circling feels like progress. Next, you linger over labor-saving devices. The language is seductive. Revolutionary, time, saving, guaranteed. There's the Wonder Mixmaster, capable of 3 speeds, plus whip, the electric can opener, which promises to make you the envy of the block, a title you suspect is not as prestigious as it sounds. The automatic egg boiler, the salad shooter, the juicetron, so many gadgets to streamline your daily grind, so many ways to pretend that the problem has ever been the eggs, and not, say, everything else. There's a secret, hopeful magic in these pages. For a moment, you envision a future where you are effortlessly efficient, adored by your family, envied by Marjorie, and serenely at peace, all thanks to the judicious use of Sears Easy Credit and a couple of labor-saving miracles. You imagine dinners that cook themselves, bread that never burns, children who stop arguing when presented with an educational board game from page 287. Then reality tugs you back. You study the prices, do mental calculations, and weigh the risk of ordering a new tablecloth when the old one only has 3 stains and still does the job. You remember the last time you ordered curtains and they turned out to be the exact shade of despair beige. You consider the time it takes for delivery, weeks, maybe months. But for these few moments, the thrill of choice and the fantasy of transformation are enough. You drift into the clothing section, where every model smiles with a confidence that suggests she's never sweated through a church picnic or gotten ketchup on her skirt. You imagine yourself in those capris, that swingy dress, those sensible but sassy shoes. And then remember the grocery budget. Still, you dog-ear the pages, because hope is free, and paper fantasies can't stain. Eventually you set the catalogue aside, a little lighter for having dreamed, and a little heavier with the knowledge that new sheets will not, in fact, solve the world's problems. You stash your wish list inside the back cover, just in case a rich relative you've never met decides to drop by and bankroll your happiness. The catalogue, you realize, is less about buying things and more about permission to want things, to imagine a life that's a little softer, a little easier, a little more colorful, if only for 5 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon. You smooth the pages, smile at your own optimism, and return to the reality of the living room, where the only labor-saving device is you. But tomorrow, the catalogue will be waiting, and you'll take another spin at the jackpot, circling hope in blue ink, dreaming of a blender that really can fix your life. Somehow, your cooking sherry is running dangerously low. And now, your youngest is sniffing around the kitchen. Suspicious. You invent a stew that absolutely needs a cup of sherry, just to be safe, and hope nobody notices that the bottle keeps moving farther back in the cabinet every week. You swear the bottle was full just last week. But here it is again, barely a trickle left, its liquid courage evaporating faster than your patience. Sherry, officially labeled for cooking, has become your secret companion during the afternoon hours, when the house feels especially loud or especially quiet. You try to keep its use above board, pouring a dramatic splash into bubbling casseroles and whispering. It brings out the flavor, as if this alone can explain why the bottle seems to shrink between Wednesday and Friday. But now the children have noticed. Your youngest, who once believed you could do no wrong, is peering into the depths of the pantry, nose twitching like a bloodhound on the scent. "Why does it smell like grown-up juice in here?" they ask, eyes narrowed. You offer a benign smile and a half-hearted explanation about the magic of French cuisine, but the suspicion lingers. Kids have a sixth sense for secrets, and this one, you fear, is a little too close to the surface. You decide to go on the offensive, planning a dinner so drenched in sherry it could have been catered by Julia Child herself. "We're having stew," you announce, adding a flourish and the promise of biscuits. You pour the last of the sherry into the pot with the air of a chef unveiling a masterpiece. The scent is rich and warm, and for a moment you feel like a magician, conjuring comfort from the dregs of the bottle. Of course, the case isn't closed. The older children exchange knowing glances, and your spouse raises an eyebrow but says nothing. At the table, the stew is dissected, poked, and ultimately declared not bad for something with raisins in it. The youngest tries to get to the bottom of things, both literally and figuratively, peering into their bowl as if it holds the answers to life's deepest mysteries. You deflect with biscuits, generous helpings, and a reminder that good food always has a secret ingredient or two. As dinner wraps up, you catch your reflection in the window and realize you've become the kind of parent you used to find so mysterious, part Martha Stewart, part Agatha Christie. You make a mental note to pick up another bottle, vowing to be more discreet, or at least to invest in a better hiding place. But the challenge is half the fun. There's a certain satisfaction in staying one step ahead of the household detectives, weaving plausible stories about basting and deglazing while quietly enjoying a sip that's just for you. The kids, not to be outdone, begin to form their own investigation squad. You find them whispering conspiratorially, setting traps with empty juice boxes and sneaking peeks into the forbidden cabinet. Their theories range from the mundane, "Mom drinks it while she cooks," to the elaborate, "It's a secret potion for grown-up emergencies." You let them speculate, knowing that their imaginations are wilder than anything you could ever confess. By bedtime, the sherry mystery has been eclipsed by more urgent concerns: missing shoes, lost homework, a stray cat in the backyard. You tuck everyone in, plant kisses on their heads, and promise another stew soon. Alone at last, you smile at the empty bottle, equal parts guilt and pride. You survived another day, another round of culinary improvisation and small domestic secrets. Tomorrow you'll restock, maybe switching to cooking wine, just to throw off the scent. After all, in the grand tradition of housewives everywhere, it's not just about the sherry. It's about keeping life interesting, keeping the kids guessing, and keeping a little mischief simmering in the background. Case closed, at least for now. So, as we drift to the end of our journey through the linoleum labyrinth of 1950s suburbia, let's take a gentle breath. Tonight, you've survived a full day as a housewife in a world where your mixer is louder than your ambitions, and the only thing frothier than your coffee is your inner monologue. You've conquered burnt toast, tamed wild children, and mastered the delicate dance of smiling through PTA meetings and bridge clubs, all while maintaining a smile that could stop traffic, or at least distract from the fact that your Jell-O salad contains more mystery than the Bermuda Triangle. You've braved the endless chores, the suburban surveillance, and the perilous world of catalog shopping. And yes, you might have poured yourself a little something extra before noon, but honestly, who could blame you? It's easy to laugh at the absurdities and shake our heads at the pressure to be perfect, at the Tupperware towers and the casseroles made with questionable intent. But there's something quietly heroic in surviving a world where the job description is do everything, look good doing it, and never let them see you sweat. These women, your grandmothers, your mothers, maybe even you, built empires of order out of chaos, found community in the clatter, and carved out secret spaces for small rebellions and little pleasures. So tonight, as you tuck into your bed, which, mercifully, does not need to be made with hospital corners tomorrow, maybe whisper a quiet thank you for microwaves, store-bought pie crusts, and the fact that nobody expects you to wear pearls while cleaning the toilet. Maybe even raise a glass of whatever you like to all the survivors of the great Jell-O era. Because history isn't just grand battles and famous speeches. Sometimes it's the everyday resilience of people muddling through, with humor, stubborn hope, and a little bit of sherry hidden at the back of the cabinet. You've made it to the end of another day, ridiculous, exhausting, and weirdly beautiful. Rest easy. The martinis are over, the casserole's cold, and tomorrow will be absurd in brand new ways. Good night.